High school. I'm going to try to move away from the computer that I might be getting feedback from. I'm just so thrilled to see everybody out here tonight. I'm also very pleased to have the honor of hosting our Parent Engagement Network Kickoff event, as well as Rosalind Wiseman. And I would like to introduce our superintendent, Dr. Bruce Messenger.
Thank you, Rhonda. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and welcome all of you as you make your way in, make yourself comfortable. So my official role is to also extend a welcome, and it's a pleasure to do so. As superintendent of schools, I have the opportunity to work with Penn in a lot of different venues. Paula and Betsy and others keep me in line, so I know what it is I'm supposed to be doing as superintendent, which I appreciate. So, lots of good things are happening in the school district right now, and I want to comment on just a couple of things, and then I also want to give a comment to sort of the challenges we're facing right now in recovering from the flood that's affecting a lot of families in our schools. But first of all, the work that's going on in the school district right now, in a big way, is that our Board of Education last year adopted a new vision and mission and goals for the school district. So, depending on how closely you track school district news, you may know that. But if you don't, you go on our district website, you'll have an opportunity to see that work that's been completed. The significance of that, I believe, for all of us here tonight and for our whole community, is that this 7-member Board of Education, who volunteered their time to run the school district, they committed last fall to make this a community process. So we facilitated with really hundreds of folks over time. Some of you in this room participated in the process where we met and we listened and we discussed and we met and listened and discussed a lot more, and eventually pulled all the ideas that came from parents and students and faculty and community about the things that we hold to be of high value to the school district and what it is we do with our students now and in the future. So it was a big deal. It took a lot of time, and we're really proud of the output. In the spring, we had 5 community engagement sessions where we went back out to the community and got a lot of additional comment, which is the Boulder Valley way, a lot of additional comment. So we refined all of that, and now we have what we believe are a set of documents that will give us guidance to the future. So this fall, we're initiating work on the strategic plan, which what that means for us is how we're going to do it. We're going to operationalize these goals, because if you've looked at the goals, or take a minute to look at them, you'll see they're pretty broad and overarching aspirational goals to help guide our future. And we believe that they'll make a positive impact on students right now and also going forward. So take a look at those goals, stay in touch with our communication. We'll give you updates along the way about work we're doing around the strategic plan. And I believe parent engagement is a really important part of that. In fact, if you take time to really look at the language that the board ultimately adopted, you'll see parents and students and the engagement with our schools as being paramount as we go forward. So take a look at the goals, the vision, and the mission. So now a little bit of reality work we're doing right now. So our school district and our communities were significantly impacted by the floods. And so just this morning, we reopened Crestview Elementary School. Welcome back. Welcome back, over 600 children. And I just have to say, I've worked a few places, I've done a lot of things, but I've never seen a community come together. This was a multi-month project that this work team and everyone else working together pulled together in 2 weeks. It was an incredible response by our community. And this last weekend, when all those parents and staff members and community volunteers came together to reset the classrooms, it was a big deal, and we're really proud of what they accomplished. The other is Jamestown School exists. We have Jamestown West and Jamestown East, and we have some of the children in the mountains attending school. We have some of the children here who were evacuated. We're working really hard when the community's ready. The school's ready. It's sitting there ready for children. We just need to get the town ready to get water and roads back in, and then we'll get them all back together sometime later this year, we hope. And then our other big challenge right now is that really we have several hundred children, students, maybe some of you, who live west of Boulder in the mountains where the road access has been blocked, destroyed, and so some of the roads are open, many of them still are not, so we're working hard to get reconnected and get those students back in our buildings, your children, if you're among those. And we've been trying to reach out with staff to continue their education until such time as we can physically get them back with us. And we hear Boulder Canyon will be open in a couple of weeks. So that's work that we're doing right now. And then, of course, our staff and families, and many of you, I'm sure, were impacted by the flood in your homes. So we're working hard to support each other through this process. And again, working with parents in our communities makes a big difference. So have a great year with the Parent Engagement Network. Thanks for your involvement, your support, and look forward to the program this evening and those that we'll have through the course of this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And thank you, Rhonda, and the team here at Centaurus. We'd really like to welcome you all here tonight. I hope that everyone is recovering from the flood disaster that has rocked our community. And it's so good to hear that the schools that have been so impacted are, that they're getting back and running. Again, I'd like to thank Centaurus High School for hosting our kickoff event. Parent Engagement Network, I don't know how many of you have attended a Parent Engagement Network event before, but this is our big kickoff for the year. We're a nonprofit organization that's been around. This is our 12th year, and we're so excited to be entering the 12th year. It's hard to believe. We have a huge number of volunteers who've made evenings like tonight possible. I mean, we really are a volunteer-run organization, and it really takes the help of all of those volunteers, as well as donations from individuals such as yourself, in order to really keep us running and being able to offer these kind of events to our community. I'd like to introduce our chair of the calendar of events and our program director, Betsy Fox. A lot of you may be aware of these community programs that we do every year, the 9-month community calendar of events. But we also do something really unique that isn't done in with a lot of organizations. We have teams in schools, in our individual schools, and we're really looking at strengthening those teams. And Betsy works directly with the teams in the school, and if you'd like to find out about how to get involved, I'd like you to be in touch with Betsy. You can contact anybody with PEN, and we will get you in touch with the right person. We have, I don't know if our board members and different people who've been helping, if you can stand up and wave and introduce yourself. I mean, not introduce yourself, but just wave. Eugenia, Lat, I said Chris, and then the volunteers from Monarch. Kathy's going to tell you a little bit just about our calendar of events that we put together every year, and Betsy's going to make a quick note about school team efforts. I do want to share with you, I've been involved with this organization. I'm one of the founding members, and I got involved with PEN because I was a parent who was afraid. I was afraid of what I was hearing about what was going on with youth in our community. My son had just entered high school, and I was afraid for what he was going to experience. And when I was invited to join this call to action that became the Parent Engagement Network, I was so thrilled. And at first I thought, well, we just have to get information out to people. Get information, get information. We realized it's more than just getting information out. It's about creating a community, and that's what we're about. We're about creating community where everyone feels accepted, because that is really what we want for our community. So we changed our shift from just looking at substances and what's wrong, what's going on with the youth in our society, to a positive, strength-based approach. And the school district has strongly supported us since the beginning. They've been a partner with us because they realize the importance and the value of meeting the social, emotional, and mental health of all of our youth and families. And that's what we're about with PEN. And I, for one, I still get afraid sometimes, but I'm glad to have my family of PEN around me team to give me support, to direct me to resources when I need them, and just to be there for me so I don't feel alone. And now I'd like to introduce Kathy Valentine, our calendar chair coordinator.
Again, this is our kickoff. A lot of times we do this a little bit earlier in the year, but we are very fortunate to have Rosalind here helping us get started for the 12th annual Parent Engagement Network calendar. So all of you got one of these as you walked in the door. You have a little packet here, and the top is the calendar. You should just know that we start in February of the year, beginning to think about topics, what's relevant, what's going on. We're not trying to be on top of all of the newest and the best, whatever. We always want to listen to parents and know what you're interested in knowing about, and what our students or kids want to maybe know about as well. So, just so you know, you have this. Also in the packet is our next speaker. I just want to say right now that Clay Roberts is coming in November, and he is a person who talks about, we've got, this is Paula's family. Yeah, Paula's family. So, you do know, that's cute. Anyway, Clay Roberts is coming. He's going to be talking to us about the developmental assets that are important for all of us. You can see what it says on here, and you can read through here. Also, by signing up for tonight, you will be on our email list, and you will be getting the Parent Engagement Network newsletter every month. So, thanks for coming. That's it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Betsy Fox, and I'm a co-founder of PEN and the program director. It's so great to see all of you here for our kickoff for the 12th year. You believe in 12 years. So I'm going off script, and I want us to give a round of applause to Paula Nelson. Paula, are you noticing this? We just give you a round of applause. See how it is? She has done so much to keep PEN together, and especially in the last few months, my house is underwater, so I haven't been able to participate as much. So she's really pulled this event together, so I really thank her so much. And there's one thing I want to say about teams. Many people think that PEN is just putting on events. It's not. We also have PEN teams at each one of the schools, and they take these powerful ideas directly into the heart of the schools. And that's where we really have the heart of PEN happening. So we really appreciate the Centaurus team that put this event on, and all around our community, that's really where the action is happening. So I want to now move into introducing Rosalind. So let me talk about Rosalind. She has become a friend. She's a member of our community. She's a mom in our community. And along with that, she is a world-class and world-renowned author. She's an expert on the social competency of the kids in our schools. And she really has a different take and a leading-edge way of speaking about bully prevention. So I think it's really going to be great to kick off the year with this conversation. So here's Rosalind.
So I'm going to tell you a little story that's going to bring you into boy world. And for those of you, before I tell the story, who were 7th grade boys, I want you to sit for a minute and just think about and remember what it was like to be a 7th grade boy. So here's my story. Your son was invited to a swim party. And a couple of weeks before the party, he said to you really casually, "Could you get me a swim shirt?" But he didn't tell you when. He didn't tell you why he needed it. He didn't say anything about it, just super casually. "Could you get me a swim shirt?" So you filed it into your head of the next time that I'm around a place that I see a swim shirt, I will get him one. The day of the party arrives. You cannot find him anywhere. So you say, in your normal parenting voice, "John, it's time to go to the party." There's no response. So a few minutes later, you say, in your second level parenting voice, John, it's time for the party. No answer. So you go up to the room that you think he is in, which immediately starts to irritate you, because he's not sitting in his room reading. He is playing a video game. And he is molded into the couch, like he is one with the couch. And there is no bathing suit, there is no towel, there's no indication that he has any plans to go to this party. So you say, in a really somewhat irritated voice, it is time to go to the party. All right. He gets up. Where'd you go? Where'd my class go? Oh, look, I'm really loud because I'm a mom, so I have to be super loud. So, wait, actually, can I get this mic? Okay, I won't be able to speak. Oh, now I'm back. Okay. So, try again. So, you take him to the party. He's really not talking to you that much. And you are slightly irritated because you bought him the present for the party. You have not gotten a thank you. It was extremely difficult to get the present because you got it on time. You should have gotten a prize for that. And you just go to the party. He's not saying anything. You drop him off. You are determined 3 hours later when you pick him up to start a new leaf. You are not going to be irritated. So, he gets in the car, and you ask an entirely reasonable question. How was the party? This is a reasonable question to ask, but not to him, because his response is, it was fine. So then you ask a follow-up question because you're trying not to be irritated. You say, another reasonable question from your point of view, who was there? And he says, some people from school. Like, you are so stupid for asking me this question. And you are back to being so incredibly irritated with this person that you think you have raised an ungrateful little brat. You drive back to the house, he immediately goes up to the same place where he was before, molds back into the couch, turns on the most violent video game he possibly can, and you're watching him destroy people. And you are thinking to yourself, A, he is not respecting screen time in his family. We have rules in this family, he is not respecting them. It's so irritating. Number 2 is my child is going to turn into a violent freak because he loves playing these games. And what is his problem? It's a beautiful day outside. Why is he not at Valmont biking? Right? Why is he not doing all of these things? In this story is actually so much of how parents miss seeing what's going on with boys. Because what you don't know is what happened at the party. What happened at the party is that his friends, and they've been friends for a long time, right? He went to this party with like his 5 group, guy friends, is that one of them has been calling him boob boy for 6 months. Because as he's going through puberty, his body is not like the other boys, and they can tease him for having moves. Well, men, you remember 7th grade? And he's not going to tell you. He's also not going to tell you that one of the guys in the group told another guy to take out his picture and take a picture of your son getting out of the pool, and then he forwarded it to a girl that he has a really big crush on. He doesn't tell you that one of his best friends, who you hang out with all the time because you're friends with his parents, saw what was happening and swam to the other side of the pool really fast. He doesn't tell you that maybe another guy tried to make it better, but it just made your son feel worse because he knew that the guy felt sort of pity for him. So he's not going to tell you that. Why is he not going to tell you? There's a couple of reasons why. Number 1 is, there is no language for 7th grade boys to talk about their bodies. As somebody who has spent a long time and is known for working with girls about being able to give them a language, after 20 years of working with boys and girls, it is so clear to me that we do not have a language, nor do we really want to put that much effort, even if we sort of see it, but not a lot, about how we create a language for boys to talk about their body image. We literally do not have it. Let me give you a very concrete example. It is September 30th. Some of you are going to be buying Halloween costumes for your little girls. I'm betting pretty much any amount of money that when you buy your costume, the costume for your daughter before she decides that she's going to get her own costume, or she's going to pretend that she's wearing a particular costume that you think is appropriate, then change as soon as she can when she's over at her friend's house, that you will think strongly, and you will have very strong opinions before, during, and after about what Halloween costume she has, because there is a very fine line between cute and completely inappropriate. But when our sons are 5 years old, or 3 years old, we buy them Batman costumes, Superman costumes, Spider-Man costumes, any kind of Superman costume, and every single one of them now has a six-pack sewn into his stomach. That is the equivalent, in many ways. Think about this. How angry do women get, do mommy bloggers and mommies get, about padded bras for their 9-year-old daughters, right? When they have to buy a bathing suit at wherever. We don't think about boys' bodies in the same way that we do girls. That is extremely important because our sons, our boys, don't have the language to be able to say, this is embarrassing to me. Second, he has a deeply wired belief that if he tells you what is going to go on and what's happening, you know what's going to happen? You're going to do something. And I'm sorry, but if you're a 7th grade boy or any kind of, most children, that is a terrible thing. Because if you do something, it's going to get worse. Whatever it is going to get worse. The other part is that he is so ashamed that he is out of control of the situation. And he is struggling so hard to think that he can handle this on his own. He hopes he can handle this on his own. He's trying to handle this on his own, but he is sitting on this feeling of, these are maybe my friends, and I can't say what I want to my friends. I have friends who are joking around with me, and we're supposed to just joke and joke and joke, but they can do whatever they want to me. But he can't even articulate that because we haven't talked about that with young people. What we do is we talk about bullying. And let me be really clear with you. One of the bad things that has happened about bullying is there's a couple. It's a pretty complicated thing. One is that a lot of the schools often think, teachers often think, that parents are seeing that every conflict is bullying, which is not. We have to be able to distinguish between the two. The second is that if you use the word bullying in middle school or high school, really by 5th grade for most kids, that it will A, guarantee adult involvement, and it shows that you can't handle yourself. Bullying is for kids, being bullied is not something that you want to be able to identify for yourself. And in schools, one of the really tricky things is, by the way, is that young people often feel like, because they're told to report all these things that are happening to them, they feel that if they report, like I said, adult involvement makes it worse, or that the adults are not going to be able to handle it, which actually those two things come hand in hand. But you don't know any of this because your son is not going to tell you. He's just going to say, I'm fine, I don't want to talk about it. So the question is, how do you get past the I'm fine, I'm good, if the kid has just had like a, indigestion and they'll be fine in 5 minutes, or he's really running off the rails, or he's sort of in between, like what I've described, like sort of temporarily miserable right now as I'm describing with the swim party. So I'm going to talk to you about how we get past that. I'm going to talk to you about how we have the best conversations and foundation for relationships with our boys. And I'm also going to talk about how we, for better and for worse, contribute to this, to the boys moving away from us, and how we can have them come to us closer. And by the way, so much of what I'm going to say this evening is absolutely effective for girls. So how did I get to this place? Because one of the things that I want to be really clear with you all is that I think that we are really not being able to we are not giving boys what they need. We're not having honest conversations with them in the way that they need. And so what I did is I went around the country and I recruited young men, and actually some of them were boys, so I had 4th grade through 12th grade, who helped me day in and day out, working on every single part of this book. So what they did was they said, okay, my mother really needs to know this. My dad really needs to know this. When my coach does this, I want to quit the team. When my mom does this, I want to stop talking to her forever. What are the things that I said to them, what are the things that we need to know? But the other thing that we did was we didn't just write a book for boys, for parents and people who care about boys. We also wrote a book for high school boys. So you'll excuse the subtitle because it is appropriate for high school boys. It's not appropriate for the majority of people in this room. You are not the demographic of the people that this is made towards. Now, again, this was written in conjunction every step of the way for the boys and with the boys. I did not have the fourth graders help me with this, by the way. But what's really awesome about this is that it is free, and it is an ebook, so the boys can have it in their pocket on any device that they have, and that if they're having a problem, they can duck somewhere into school and say, okay, I want to quit the team. What do I do? Or, you know, some kid is being miserable to another kid on the team. How do I handle it? I'm the captain of the team. How do I handle it? For high school boys, I have a friend who's got an eating disorder. I have a friend who's an alcoholic. I have a friend whose parents' marriage is going down the drain and he's falling apart. How do I handle it? How do I ask somebody to prom and go to prom and not spend $1,000? How do I manage myself in the complexities of the world that I'm living in? What happens if I get a picture from a girl that's unsolicited and she's naked? How do I handle that? How do I handle this? What if I'm next to a friend, a guy, who's like, yes, you just got a picture like that, you need to send it to every single person that you know. And you actually have a little bit of conflict about that. How do you handle this? So these are the problems that our kids are dealing with. So this is for them. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it again, which is, in the back of Masterminds is a letter that I wrote to people who are parents or people who get enthusiastic. So if you have a high school boy in your life and you think this might be helpful to him, I'm going to ask you to really read this letter, because I don't want you, here's my request, is to go home to someone like this boy, and you've got those eyes, you know what I'm talking about? These like super intense eyes of like, oh my gosh, I got this really cool thing, I really need you to read it, this will be so interesting. Please do not do this. I've written a letter to you specifically saying, do not do this. But, you know, as parents, moms, can be really challenged in this way. So, and God bless us, but we've got some challenges. Dads have challenges too. This is one of our challenges. So when you do this, I'm just going to ask you, in general, to just like write a little, like just nothing about like seeing me, nothing. Just write like, oh, check this out. That's it. That's like the most words I want you to say. In fact, the best thing to do is just forward it to him and say nothing. And then the other thing I don't want you to do is I don't want you to have the eyes the next day and say, like, did you get the thing that I forwarded you? So, super chill. Like, relax. You have to relax. All right. So this is the project. This is not the books. This is a project. And it's a campaign of how do we change the way that we talk about boys and how do we talk to boys. Because I've worked with boys for a long time. You are here because you care about a boy. There are reasons. Either you have a relationship that you would like to be different with a boy in your life that is so, so important to you. It is also the case that our boys overall are hugely struggling. So this is not about girls versus boys. I have zero tolerance for that. Girls have to have strong relationships with boys and vice versa, regardless of their sexual orientation or anything. They must have strong relationships with each other. But the other part is that girls are given permission in our culture to have passion about things, specifically about making the world a better place. Girls are allowed to have passion to make the world a better place. Boys have to hide it. Let me give you an example about that. When I was asking boys to help me, I would say during presentations, hey, I'm doing this book, if you're interested, let me know. Some boys would come up to me face to face and talk to me. But most boys would find me online and tweet at me and say, I want to do this. So we have to empower boys that it's okay to feel passion to make the world a better place for themselves and others. It is okay for them to ask for help. It is okay for them to learn to advocate for themselves in competent ways. So that is what this is about. It is about getting to the swim party, getting boys to talk to us, creating a foundation for being able to have them listen to us and vice versa, and to take it to a larger context for boys overall. Now, For me, as an educator, my 4 pillars, schools love pillars, they love pillars. Not a huge, like, rah-rah on the pillars, because if you put posters up on walls about respect and self-respect and treat people the way you want to be treated, that it basically comes across sometimes as band-aids or sort of advertisements, and if kids are treating each other badly or teachers are treating kids badly in the hallways, it just comes across as really hypocritical, or we don't care, or we don't know how to fix the problem. So having said that, for me, when I'm working with communities, there are 4 concepts that I like to keep in mind, and these are the 4. So the first is that you have meaning beyond oneself. If you're going to be happy, you have meaning beyond oneself, you have a hope of success, which is not a guarantee, you have social connection, because social connection is imperative to who we are as human beings, and you have satisfying work. I would argue the point that how did I get 200 boys to help me for 2 years, day in and day out, for no other reward, but that they could argue with me basically all the time, and that if they worked very hard, I would write them a college recommendation. Or a work recommendation. I have written a lot of college recommendations now. But the reason that they were doing this, I think, is because it satisfied these 4 things. And if school could be this way, that would be transformative. Now, the problem is that social connection is absolutely inherent, it's absolutely integral to who we are, but conflict is inevitable. It is absolutely inevitable. You will never be able to protect your child from getting into conflict, ever. There are some parents here who have 4-year-old, 3-year-old children, and you're hoping that you can protect your children from all of this stuff. You're not in the right place. Conflict is inevitable. School is the place where, beyond going to math and chemistry and language arts and all that, is that you learn about group dynamics. You learn about the power of group dynamics. You also learn how smart and competent the adults are who are in charge of you. Can they manage when there is an abuse of power? Do they notice it? Can they effectively address it? Are they going to back up the person who's abusing power? Are they going to say nothing so it looks like they're capitulating? What is going to happen? Those are the things that school teaches you, for better or for worse. Now, for the purposes of tonight, I'm going to have to pick the things that I talked to you about. So one of the things that we're going to hone in on is the inner circle. Boys from that swim party. Remember I said there was a boy that swam to the other side. There was the boy who told another boy to take the picture, but that boy took the picture. There was a guy who was receiving it. There was a guy who made the joke. Boys are not simple. They don't just fight it and it's over. They don't. We just say that stuff all the time because it looks like girls are the ones that are complicated. Boys are actually much more complicated because they're hiding all of the stuff that's going on. So their dynamics are really complex. So when I went to the boys and said, okay, we have these queen bees, these bankers, and all of these girls and these roles that I've come up with, do we have them amongst groups of boys? And unequivocally, they said yes. No matter what where they were in the social strata of the school, if you had a group of boys, you would have these roles. Now, the roles can be flexible. You know, these are not roles that are like sewn onto you. You can never like pull them off. That's not what this is. Is that you can be a little bit of one thing, a little bit of another in various situations. So, having said that, I'm going to show you what these rules are. Okay? All right, because there's a tendency when you see the roles to go, I know who that kid is. That kid has been like that since they were 5 years old, right? So just like take it down and just check, just go with me here. All right, and they're not all bad. The rules are not all bad. So we have the mastermind. The mastermind directs the group's movement. So in middle school, you know, when boys are eating in a group, unless they're assigned tables with no seats and they're not friends with each other, and even then you probably have it, the boy who gets up first, who's done eating, that's your mastermind. That's the person who controls the movement of the group. Gives ultimate approval to friends on everything. So what video game are they going to play? Who's going to go first? What sneakers are the sneakers that are good? Which ones would you never get caught dead wearing? Is anybody in your group have the right to wear skinny jeans without being completely mocked and ridiculed? Right? Every decision, the ultimate approval is the mastermind's. For administrators in the room or teachers in the room, one of the things that's very tricky about this kid is that you never know how smart he is usually until his power is threatened. So there have been times in my life where I've had to discipline or I've tried to discipline a kid like this. And when you find out these like horrendous, horrible things he's done, the first reaction I have honestly had is, there's no way that kid pulled that off. He's not smart enough. Not smart enough. But I am wrong, because he's just been hiding his Machiavellian genius from everybody. I'll give you an example. One of the schools that I worked in had a kid who was hazing. He was, by this point, he was a junior, but he had been a disaster for years, and a disaster to himself and to others. And so he got suspended for basically, like, it was a private school, for hazing a kid and for sexually harassing a girl. They should have done this a long time ago, but they were having a problem disciplining, holding him accountable. Could have possibly been because his parents had some amount of donation pull with the school. So he has a problem. They suspend him for 2 days. And so what he does is he goes down to the restaurant where all the kids hang out at the end of the hill, the bottom of the hill where the school is. And so he holds court. And so during the free periods of his, during the day, his inner circle friends and other people go and pay homage to him at the school, at the restaurant. And the other thing that they did was that they wore black armbands in protest of his suspension. Very smart. Very smart. Now, one thing about the direct the groups movements, for those of you who have younger children, I want you to think about the playground. Whoever sets the rules and whoever can claim a redo and everybody agrees, that's your mastermind. The person who, well, I'm going to go through these, but that's one way that you can identify a mastermind. There's one other kid who can do the redo and everybody agrees, but that could be your mastermind. Now, that's pretty negative, but there's some really positive things about this kid. He's super charismatic. He can be really fun to be around. He's really loyal to you against other people, which is cool, right? That's really not a small thing. So, and he can be great with you one-on-one. There are lots of very positive things about being in an inner circle and being friends with a mastermind. An associate gathers information. He is the social point person. So go back to my, the big sofa, right? Where all the kids are like, now they've got 5 boys all playing a game, right? And so as the boys get older, especially as they're doing it and they get more freedom of movement, then the plans are coming in through the associate's phone. The associate says what the plans are, and the mastermind chooses where they're going to go. Does that make sense? He has the best ability to stand up to the mastermind, which is good. This is a good thing. Yay, this is good things. It's not all bad. A bouncer. A bouncer is the kid who took the picture at the pool. And the boys, by the way, were the ones who came up with all the names for these things. So a bouncer can't read people's motivations. He can't realize at the pool, okay, why am I the one that is being chosen to take the picture, right? Now, I want you to think about how smart masterminds are about these things. And girls do this, queen bees do this all the time. This is one of their hallmarks. They figure out ways to get other people in trouble, but they're the ones that start it. So when the mastermind says, you take the picture, it's on the bouncer's phone. So when they find out what happened, and we freak out about it and talk about cyberbullying and all this stuff, who does it look like really did it? It's the bouncer. But he was the person that was given directions, and he could not hold his own. He struggles academically, and he takes the fall for the mastermind and the associate. Because he puts in his mind that being loyal to these boys is a true demonstration of friendship. He does not understand how he's being manipulated. And even if you explain it to him, there are kids I have talked to who go, okay, but I'm still doing it. So I want you to think about this, because this kid oftentimes gets in trouble, but he's not really the person who started it. So in teaching, one of the truisms of teaching is that, and I think it's appropriate for parenting as well, is that you always see the second hit. You never see the first hit. You see the reaction. You don't see the thing that started it, which for the most part means that the person who started it has more social intelligence and is more sneaky than the kid who's reacting really strongly. But when we turn around and we see the person reacting, our natural inclination is to go to that person. But when that happens, if you're a teacher or if you're a parent, this is really annoying, but this is why our jobs are so hard, is that the kids know, right? You're in a classroom, the kids know who started it. So then you as the teacher look incompetent, which is completely unacceptable. That's why I spend so much time talking with teachers. Okay, next, the fly. The fly builds his friendships by bragging or buying. He hovers outside the group because he's waiting for opportunities to be a friend to them. Girls, exactly. The pleaser kind of girl can do exactly the same thing. Other boys have no guilt excluding him because they think he's annoying. So they will use him, but they will use him and they don't feel like it's hard for them to feel guilt about him. Say it that way. Now this is a role that's actually pretty tough. When I was listening to the boys talk about it, it was very hard. They were insistent that this role be put into the groups. It felt like there was not a lot of positivity about this role. But I had to reflect what the boys were telling me. And I certainly understood what they were talking about and could picture it very easily. All right, the entertainer. The entertainer was the kid at the swim party who made the joke to try and make it better. He could have even made a joke about himself, like, hey, I've got moves too, look at my moves, right? He would do that thing of, let's take it off of the target, the heat off the target, and put it on me. So, he is obnoxious, but he is not mean. He is good at making people feel comfortable, so he's trying to do that at the swim party. And he has a hard time sometimes turning himself off. So if you have an entertainer at your house, it can feel sometimes like, I just need you to stop talking. Okay? There's various actually versions of I just need you to stop talking. So if you have somebody who constantly argues with you that you think is like, everyone laughs about, oh, they're going to be a lawyer when they grow up, and you're like, ha, 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 right? That is like, I just need you to stop talking. But this is another kind of, I just need you to stop talking. A punching bag. A punching bag is the easy target among the group, and he doesn't look like a target to the outside world. He looks like he feels like part of the group, and he is beloved by these boys, and he loves these boys. So the friendships are tight. All of these friendships, except for the fly, are tight. They're meaningful to the boys. Next is that the inner circle believes that they can treat him badly. It is very similar to when people say, I can talk or do something to my brother or sister, but nobody else can. Right? I get to do that to my sibling, but nobody else can. They say exactly the same thing. He's our boy. We can harass him and make him miserable, but nobody else can. And because these friendships are so important to him, if you find out about it or see it, he will justify or apologize or rationalize for how they're treating him. And this is because the friendships are so important. I mean, think about this. Think about when you were that age. Was there anybody that you enjoyed sitting around and doing nothing with? If you had a group of friends like this. You might even feel that way today. But these friendships are complicated. And so here's the last one. This is the conscience. And I really, if you're thinking, okay, this is my boy. Okay, so just giving you a heads up, this is something I really didn't understand. When the boys said, okay, we need somebody who's really rules-focused. I was like, okay, we get that kid. He's like the rule-focused kid. He really is like, you see him as a goody two-shoes, but like parents, he's like a trustworthy kid. These boys are so complicated. They are so complex. They are so tricky. I was constantly giving just like admiration and awe for like, really? You are doing this and you know that you're doing this? And they would look at me like, why are you even asking me this question? Of course we do this, right? How can we not do this? So here's the deal. So yes, he worries about rules and consequences. So important to him. But that is not all. The conscience, the boys sometimes don't like having him around because it sometimes feels like having a chaperone. So they're going to do something that you would consider completely stupid and dangerous, and they think would be really fun, the other boys, then having the conscience around is not so great because he might say something like, should we really do this? Should we really do that? Right? Now remember, think about this. The fly is going to say, absolutely, and we can do it at my house. And I will facilitate whatever it is that we need to do to make it possible. So I want you to think about how this works. Now, it is like having a chaperone, but sometimes the boys use him as a screen. So here's my example for you. There is a boy that we worked with in the group who is an awesome kid. Trust him, super trustworthy. He said to me, Rosalind, the conscience is awesome because when I'm talking to my mom and I want to go out to like some concert or I want to go out on Saturday night, all I have to say is I'm going out with this kid. And then my mom was like, oh great, no problem, of course you can go, right? Am I ever going to tell my mother that I'm going out with this other guy? No way. Of course not. If I say this guy's name, everything is good. So they use him as a screen. They also will use him as a screen as they get older. So people who have younger children, if you sort of want to start doing this, you can do that. And then I'll tell you, take him out. So say the fly has a party, right? My parents are gone for 5 hours, or they went up to their, okay, let's do it for like sort of this area. What if well-meaning parents go up for the day to go skiing and they get stuck in really bad traffic? And their son, for whatever reason, stayed behind because he had work to do or a game. He's a sophomore or junior and he has a game. These are well-meaning parents. These are not parents who are like, yes, let's definitely allow our children to be at home. No problem, unsupervised, right? They get stuck up there. They're not coming back for a really long time. If their kid is the fly, he's going to look at this opportunity and say, okay, this is an opportunity for me to be more valuable to the other boys. Or the punching bag, if it's suggested to him, will never be able to say, it'll be very hard for him to say no. The bouncer is looking for ways, like the fly, to be able to say, I am loyal. I can facilitate this. So, conscience goes over to the party. The police are called because there's too much music. So who are the boys going to send out to talk to the police officer? The conscience. Because the conscience is actually worried about the rules and consequences. So he's very sincere when he says to the police officer, I'm really sorry, I'm going to get my friends under control, we're going to get the music down, I'm really sorry, sir, I know we're being disrespectful, I know it. Because a lot of police officers can see through a mastermind being like, yeah, officer, I totally understand, right? That whole thing, a police officer's like, I'm walking in the house right now, right? But the conscience is worried and anxious, that's what a police officer wants to see. These boys are really smart, and we need to give them credit for that, right? So we think girls are really complex and smart. Boys are smart. We got to give them credit. All right. Now, the other part of this is that remember, these labels do not stick. They can move around. One kid can be one thing in the neighborhood and another at school. They can move. Masterminds can realize that it is exhausting being a mastermind and that they can't be personally authentic if they're constantly trying to reassert their power. Bouncers can figure out that loyalty is being manipulated and they can speak truth to power. Boys can figure this out. They can. So what I do when I'm talking about doing something right is that I would rather, and you see it in Masterminds and you see it in the guide, is me talking about having champion moments. Not like you're a champion, like where you have a thing on a t-shirt, because I think that most kids feel that that's a little odd, right? Like, I am going to stand up for everything that's right all the time, which is also exhausting, by the way. And if you have a moment where you slip and people look at you like you're really hypocritical or incompetent. So what's more helpful to me is to be able to talk to young people about when to identify moments of social injustice, pay attention to it, and step into the moment to speak your truth to power. Understanding that you can go back, you can ease out of the situation. So it takes the pressure off of the kids, because this is extraordinary amount of pressure. Okay, now, so how do we get, if I've given you a little bit of a lay of the land for the boys, and remember, not all boys are going to have this kind of inner circle group of kids, but if they play on a team, it'll come up. If they're on any kind of team, it'll come up. But some kids will have one friend, so I don't want you to think about, about the kids have different kinds of friendships. All of them have their strengths, all of them have their challenges. But when I talked to you in the very beginning about how we handle talking to our boys, let's go back to the swim party. So how do we get our son to talk to us? So say he is the punching bag in this group. How do we do it? Well, strangely enough, the boys actually have very strong feelings and know exactly what works for them and exactly what does not work for them. So here's what does not work for them. What does not work for them, if we want our son to talk to us, stop playing the video game, and turn to your mom and dad and say, I'm having this problem. How do we get there? We roll it back to the moment that your son gets into your car at the end of the day, from practice or school. Because what experts have been made, for example, other so-called experts, and other people have been telling you is that when your child gets into the car, that you can express your love and interest by asking them all sorts of questions about their day. The boys hate it. They don't want you to interrogate them at the end of the day. I want you to think about what it takes for them in any kind of capacity to walk through school, is that they have armor, even in the best of schools, have armor to get through the day. If you have a healthy relationship with your son, when he sees you, he wants to decompress and relax. So when you say to him, getting into the car, how was your day? If they're younger, were people nice to you? Who did you play with on Foursquare? Right? Did that child do that redo again? Did they share? Did they share nicely? They didn't share? Well, why did you talk to the teacher? Right? That's the younger kids. For middle school kids, it's like, so did you hand in that assignment? Are you ready for that field trip? Did you do all of those things? Did you check your computer, your online thing? Did you do? For high school kids, how was practice? How did you perform? How is it going? Did you balance it with all the other 100 million things that you are doing? What is going on? Your child, understandably, shuts down. And what the boys have said to me over and over again, and this was across socioeconomic status, this was across national, this was actually across international boundaries, I swear to you, is that every time this came up, the boys would get up and start laughing, they would start imitating their parents, they would high five, and some of them, it was like, literally like we were in church, like, hallelujah, thank you that we were talking about this. I had kids beg me, that when I went and talked to parents around the country, that I would tell them to stop interrogating them in the car. Now, I also just as a way to do this even more, in a way that you can relate to, is I really want you to think about what it would be like for you if you came home from work, from an average day of work, average day of just doing your things that you do, and the first thing your son says to you is, so, how was work? Did you do all of your errands? Did you answer all of your emails? How was your meeting? Did that person you hate that you work with, did they actually confront you? How did you handle that? Well, do we need to talk about it? Well, do I need to do something about it? Let's do something about it. Let's sit down right now and do something about this. Right? I mean, I actually want you to think when you leave here that our sons are actually remarkably tolerant of us in many, many ways. So, and they love us in spite of the stuff that we do to them. So, and that's like the first thing. The second thing is, and this is really important, is that sometimes we get to a place, especially as our sons get bigger, I tend to see that sometimes we get to a place, and dads, this can be particularly challenging for you, is that we want our sons to do things, right? They have to, and our daughters, right? You know I'm talking about our daughters too, but right now I'm talking about sons. We need them to pull their weight at home. We need to teach them to be responsible people who can take care of their business. They need to pull, moms, dads are working really, really hard. Our sons need to pull their weight. Extremely important. The issue is that the ways in which we do this with our sons, actually they have very strong reactions to it. So in Masterminds, one of the things that really hit me super hard was the end of writing the book. Really, tail end of writing the book. And I had talked to a group of kids in Massachusetts, and at the end of the day, during the day, at the end of the day I was talking to the parents. At the end of the presentation to parents, so this is 9:30 at night, there was a young man who was, 250 pounds, who was an offensive lineman for the football team, and he was waiting for me. And he said, I'd really like to talk to you. He waited for the book sign, waited for the presentation, the book signing, the whole thing, and he was waiting for me. And he said, I would really like to talk to you. And he said, look, I know I have to pull my weight. I know, but I hate the way my father speaks to me. I hate it. Because I come home and I've got homework to do and my dad says to me, take out the trash. And so I say, okay, I'll take out the trash, but can I get my brother to help me, because like do the recycling or something? And the dad's response was, fine, then you will do it for a month by yourself. And this kid's reaction, his name was Will, it's like, I just want to be able to speak. Why is everything that we're doing becoming this huge battle? Now, let me say, it might be the case, God knows, I know this is a mother, that maybe his dad has said to him 27 times, take out the trash, right? And his version of in a minute is way different than a minute, right? I mean, let's give, benefit of the doubt. So let's say that Will's dad is super, super frustrated. But it is imperative to realize that here is this really big kid. You would never think that he was falling apart inside and crushed inside, that he could not speak to his father without it becoming a battle. And so one of the things I want us to think about is the difference between holding kids accountable in the ways that absolutely we need them to be, and also being able for them to advocate for themselves and being able to hear it. Because that is a fine line, and God knows we get frustrated and we just want to say, oh my gosh, stop talking, right? Stop arguing, just do what I'm asking you to do, right? I get it. Believe me, I get it. But we have to be cognizant of the way in which we're coming across to them. And the boys have such a hard time speaking about it. And so, by the way, one of the things that was awesome about Will was that I said to him, we went through a whole process of what he could do with his dad. And we decided that he would speak to his dad during a commercial during a football game. And that he would go and sit down next to his dad, and he would mute the television, and he would say exactly what he doesn't like, exactly what he wants, and say, Dad, this is really important to me. I do not want to be fighting with you all the time, but I need to be able to speak without making me feel like I don't have the right to do it. Now, of course, you remember I said to you, like, don't do the eyes thing? Remember that? About 20 minutes ago, I'm like, don't do those eyes, right? We're like, what happened? What happened? Okay, I have that problem with my students. So they do these really crazy, scary things, like they go confront people, and I get all nervous, and I want to know if it works. And I'm speaking in front of like 1,000 people somewhere on TV somewhere, I swear to you, and I'm thinking about Will and his dad. Or I'm thinking about a girl who's going to confront this, her abusive boyfriend, or all these things. So it's really difficult, though. You got to keep the eyes like down. So I just wrote Will an email like, "Hey, what's up?" He said, "Nothing." And I said, "So anything happened with your dad?" And then I got, and it doesn't always, it's not perfect all the time, but I got the email that made my week. I talked to him, did the thing during the advertisement, and it worked. Much, much better. My dad and I talked. That is huge. The idea for me of Will, 250 pounds, I'm guessing his dad's like 275 pounds, sitting next to each other, watching a football game, having this conversation, that's why I do what I do. And it's one of the things that I want you to think about in terms of if you have those kinds of relationships with your son, and we all get into these kinds of patterns, I think most of us do, and it's very easy for us to do it, we can get past it, we can get to a better place. We really, really can. All right, so what are some other strategies to get your son to be able to talk to you? So if it's not going to work in the car, what is going to work? What I think works much, much better for younger boys is that you sit, like when it's there, it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and it's time for them to go to bed. So lights are out, you're still awake, he's sort of awake, and you sit at the foot of the bed, and you say something like, hey, anything that's important that you think you want to tell me, or anything you think I should know? Be real careful about how you phrase that, because if you say like, is there anything I should know? It's going to be like, does she know that I'm in trouble? What did I do? Wait, there's an account in his head. Like, what are the things I did? I do something wrong? I'm not really sure. Wait, hold on 1 second. So we don't want to make our sons in this particular situation paranoid. So just say like, is there anything, I just want to check in with you. Do not expect a Hallmark conversation right then, right? Or a lifetime conversation where your son immediately goes like, oh my gosh, Mom, thank you so much for asking me. Dad, oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking me. All you want to do is your son could say, I'm good. Right? There's a difference between us saying like, no, I'm good, shut down. Listen to the tone of his voice. And he listens to you and says, no, I'm good. Because what you want is a precedent where you are just there and you are seeing him, even though it's dark. I really think it should be dark so you can't see each other's facial expressions. Because I know that if I raise my eyebrow or sigh a little bit, that the people that live in my house are very reactive to my sighs. So if they see or hear anything like that, they immediately are not going to listen to what I'm saying. And they're probably right, by the way. by the way. So, no lights, right? Try and do it when it's dark. For people who are in middle school or like younger kids throughout, I think it's really helpful that if you're, doing things like they are doing some kind of sport and you can participate in any way, you're having these conversations there. As the boys get older and high school, I think I have found that texting, not 27 times a day, like 1 time a day, important. And also, for those of you, maybe this doesn't happen to you all, but the boys are telling me that they do, is if you all are feeling so disengaged from your son that you have to text his friends, especially his friends that are girls, which the boys tell me happens quite a bit, that is understandable, but I would limit it, because I think what you got to do is strengthen the relationship that you have with your son in the ways that I'm talking about. Last thing, if you are angry at your son about something, like say you're angry with Will because he won't take out the trash 57 times, here's what I would suggest you do when you're angry, because this actually goes to him talking to you when he's upset. If you're angry at him, this is what I do, as a mother and as an educator. I think I'm trying to say everything I want to say in 3 minutes. Okay? I'm 3 points in my 3 minutes, and I will get those points out no matter what my child does to distract me, annoy me, get me off my game, get me to forget why I was talking in the first place. 3 points. I will say these 3 points. Okay? And if I repeat myself, I will stop. Because once you repeat yourself, they stop listening to you. So you can even say, I have now listened to how I am repeating myself. I'm now going to stop. The other last part is about fighting and arguing is that children tend to, both boys and girls, when you're leaving for somewhere, that's when they're starting to like fuss at you about stuff, and you've got things to do and places to go and places to drop them off, and you're getting incredibly exasperated. And so sometimes you capitulate because you're not really listening, or you just got to get out the car, right? You got to get out the house. That is a tactic. It is done on purpose. So what I would suggest that you do is that you say to the person who's arguing with you, I would love to have this argument. I look forward to have this argument. I cannot do this argument right now, but I can do it at 8 o'clock tonight. Are you available at 8 o'clock tonight? You are? Excellent. 8:15 works for me. We will come back and convene again, and we will argue the point, what you want, right there. Okay? And if you get eye rolling and things like that, this is the difference that I make between eye rolling and how to stop it. If you get like the sign and eye rolling for boys or for girls, they want something from you when you're arguing. And you're this kid, let's go back to the swim party. This kid who's being teased for moves and all that, you do feel terrible for him. And he could be a total brat and roll his eyes and be horrible to you. Right? That is both of those things are true. So think about that when you're getting the eye rolls, if it's really annoying and irritating to you, you cannot listen to him because you're getting so irritated, I would say something like, okay, I want to be able to hear you, but I cannot hear you right now because and then I would name it. The eye rolling, the sighing, the like, right? You're so stupid, right, that thing. I can't hear you when you're doing that. So what I need you to do is I need you to stop doing this, get yourself under control, and when you're ready, this really works well with 8th grade girls. So when you get that hip, eyes, all that thing together, excuse yourself, get it together, stop it. When you're ready, come back and advocate your position. I will not be able to speak to you until you figure that one out, okay? If your kids are doing if the kids are doing chores and things like that, and they're like rolling their eyes and all that, just, you know what? It's like for boys, doing the smallest thing can be like Herculean labor, right? Just let them roll their eyes as they take out the trash, okay? Or put their dishes away. Now, all of this, crazy enough, is what the boys are telling me works to get them to talk to you. So I want you to think about if you have questions or concerns. I'm going to give you what to do when your child is having a problem. But I also want you to know that you can ask me any questions about anything, like video games or girls, or if you want to talk about Grand Theft Auto 5, totally open to that. Any of the boys in the room are like, happy to talk about any of the things that are a concern to you, so when you leave here tonight, it's meaningful for you. Let me give you what I think about when a kid, so you've done all this good stuff, your kid says to you, right, from the swim party, the kids are bothering me. What I would want you to do is I want you to say, okay, I'm not really sure what you mean by bothering, so can you give me a little bit more specific so I understand what's going on? Then, your child tells you the problem. I would suggest that you say one of three things. Well, three things, but it doesn't really matter what order. I'm really sorry this happened to you. Thank you for telling me. Because you're really, you need to acknowledge the leap of faith he's taking in you to tell you. This is true for educators, counselors, this is what I think works. So thank you so much for telling me. I'm really sorry this happened, and together we're going to work on this. Now your son might say to you, okay, but I'm going to tell you this. You have to promise not to do anything. And then you get caught, right? Because you want your son to tell you, because like this kid who's never told you anything, or hasn't told you anything in 3 years, is now telling you all these things. You're like, okay, I'll do whatever you want. Don't make that promise. Because you don't want to make a promise you can't keep. So what I would do is I would say, okay, I would love to make this promise to you. I just really would. But you might tell me something that I gotta go find, I might not know the answer. I might have to find somebody who knows more about this who can help us. But what I can promise you is that when that happens, you and I will do this together. That you will be, part of the process. Our kids can handle us being adults if we include them in the process. Understandably, they stop talking to us when we take away all of their control. And to be perfectly fair, we don't have to deal with the consequences of this. They do. The fallout of this is not going to be on us. It's going to be on them. So we have to respect, literally respect, that they have to live with the consequences of this. Now, we can do it if you say, I really want to do it, I would love to promise you, but I'm going to walk you through how to find somebody. And you know what? And dads in the room, here's a moment of transformation. Or if you are a man who has a relationship with a boy, super important. And women, obviously we can do this too. I just think that we need to look for as much support and strength around us as possible. Is that if you say to this boy in your life, look, everybody gets in situations that are overwhelming. Everybody does. Asking for help is not weak. It is a skill. It is a skill. I have been able to get through times in my life, you might even say of an appropriate example, that allowed me to be able to get through it. I only was able to get through it because I was able to ask for help. It is not a sign of weakness to ask for help. It is a skill. Of course you want to manage these things on your own. I get it. But at a certain point, actually managing things on your own includes asking for help. So when you do that, you're really changing for the boys, you're counteracting all of these messages that the culture is getting, that the culture is giving boys that they cannot ask for help. Because we go back to Batman. I love the Batman movies. Love that. Could write about them endlessly. The Dark Knight never, ever asks for help. In fact, Alfred actually always knows what he needs. Right? Think about that. He never has to ask for help. He's always sullen and depressed and sort of detached, and then he sort of falls in love, but then he has to grind his teeth to show how much he loves the person. That is his expression of love. It's very difficult. It is very exhausting. So that message is powerful, and it's not all bad. Who doesn't want to be a superhero at some point in their lives? Who doesn't want to be confident and courageous and be able to have power like that? I do. Sure I do. So this is a powerful image that's not all bad, but it has repercussions that are really important for boys. Okay, now, let me show you what I think is helpful for when you're as you're going through this with your son, regardless of the age. And by the way, the guide has it all for the boys in their own language, but there is this in the boy guide, because boys can go after each other so horribly, but it all gets laughed like a joke. Just like girls. So, good teasing is you feel liked, you don't feel put down, and they're going to stop if you ask. That's the definition of good teasing. Ignorant teasing is they don't know how you feel, and they say I was just joking, relax, and they don't mean to put you down by saying that. Malicious teasing is your tease for your insecurities, right? Good boy, go back to that. That was not just a coincidence. And if he says anything by it, then the boys are going to threaten in some way ending the friendship. And it is relentless, and it is in public. So if we talk about for boys, well, they're teasing me, what happens is it gets lumped into this big category, and then people get away with bad stuff. Because there's a world of difference between malicious teasing and good teasing, but if we call it the same thing, we can't differentiate. So the way I explain it to boys, because I want boys to be able to be rude to each other, within limits. I want them to be unbelievably rude to each other. Fine, within limits. If there is a democracy of put-downs in the group, meaning everybody can put each other down, you're good. That's the way I say it to boys. If everybody can put each other down, good. If only a couple people in the group or one person can put somebody down or everybody down, that is not good. Then you've got malicious teasing. Then you've got abuse of power. And I like using the words abuse of power because that seems to resonate more with the boys. Okay, so any questions, concerns, comments?
Would you ever ask your son, are you being teased?
Would I ever ask my son if he was being teased? What I would do and what I have done is, when there are certain moments in their lives where they change, like you change the school, you go from, like the start of the year, 4th grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade can be really fractured times for friendships. Going into middle school for the first time, going into high school for the first time, joining a team for the first time. I would say some variation of, applicable to the specifics of, hey, I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. Like, and you don't. I have no, even if you've heard things. I have no idea what's going on in your middle school. But unfortunately, it's pretty common for people to go after each other. So if that happens to you, then you know that you can come talk to me about it. And you know what? If you don't want to talk to me about it, you can make a joke about, like, because you think I might freak out, or, you're getting older, and for boys, you can say, maybe you want to talk to somebody else. And girls, you can say the same thing. Girl, you want to talk to somebody else because it's too stressful to talk to your mom or your dad. And who is the person that you think is cool enough and I think has their head on their shoulders that you can talk to, right? Like, I love having these allies that I know that my kids can go to if there's a significant problem. And because that's literally what a village should be, right? That whole soundbite that politicians like to talk about. So so you can do that as a setup. And then the other part is, if you do see your kid behaving strangely, differently, it doesn't necessarily have to be that it's bad. For example, I know a lot of kids who are in very high social strata of their groups and their schools, and they change their friendships. They stop being friends with these people, and they are friends with people that are in the lower social position of the school, and their parents get very worried. Why is this happening? Those kids are so nice. I know those parents. Those are good families. I don't know these people over here, and those kids look weird to me. I don't know what's going on, and the parents start to judge these kids over here. I cannot tell you how many times, literally countless times, I have had parents say to me, how could that kid have done X? Hazing, bullying, sexual assault, whatever it is. He came from such a nice family. When meanwhile, these kids over here are actually really good kids, but we're not seeing it because we're judging them, and our kids, by the way, are extremely sensitive to what we think about their friends. Right? They know who we're judging, and they know why. So then that's why sometimes the boys will start hiding their friendships from you. Not necessarily because these kids are bad kids, because they don't want to deal with the judgments. And that's painful to hear as a parent, but it's really, really important to hear because A, we want our boys talking to us, and B, those relationships are important to them. And there could have been a very good reason, for example, why your son or your daughter went from a very high social strata and went to a lower one, because maybe it was a lot less social pressure. Maybe these kids over here are partying way more, doing drugs and alcohol way more than these kids over here. Could be. It happens quite a bit. All right, answer your question? All right. Any others? Any others? Yes?
What if you, as a parent, walk in and you see somebody being incredibly rude to your middle school girl?
What if you as the parent walk in and see somebody being rude to your kid?
Protect yourself. And then, like, I saw this happen, and she was like, oh, no, Mom, she wasn't being rude. And like, I wanted to kill the kid.
Okay, so what if you see, correct me if I'm wrong, your kid being treated badly by another kid, you talk to your child about it, and they say, it's fine, don't worry about it, like, it's not bad. Here's what I would do, and in Queen Bees, it goes into this as well, and Masterminds does this too for boys. Your child is feeling, there could be things about this kid that they like, or they're not ready to break the friendship. It's really difficult for a child, even if they know it, to say, this is a very unhealthy relationship for me, I'm now going to end it, right? I mean, how many of us have been in unhealthy relationships? It takes forever to get out of them. So your responsibility as a parent is to be able to guide them through in a very excruciatingly uncomfortable situation for you, which is that you've got to guide your child through the process of establishing healthy boundaries with people. And so I want you to take the long road on this, because if you focus on the child who you don't like, you're going to get distracted from the overall goal, which is to teach your child healthy personal boundaries. So the exercise that I do with kids is I say, okay, what are the top 3 things you have to have in a friendship? And boys and girls are going to say trust, loyalty, and be myself, some variation on that. And then you say, what are the top 3 things that come to your mind about this person when they're mad at you, or like your relationship? The top 3 things that come to your mind about how they treat you. Then I want the kid, to compare the list. So you want them to get to the point of, are my values and my friendship standards, how are they consistent with my experiences? Now here's the trick. The trick is and it's funny, but it's not funny, is to lean over to them and do you see how horrible this relationship is for you, right? You can't do that. It's going to backfire. So you let them sit with it, and then say, okay, so just sit with this. We can talk about it later. No pressure. Just sit with it. Maybe tomorrow on the way to school, then you can talk about it, right? Where if there are no siblings around and no other kids, then you can talk about it, right? Where you say, did you think about that? What did you think? Manage your tone when you say that, too, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is just for a few minutes, hold on one sec, because I want to bring 2 people up to be able to help you with the couple of the last questions, and also to share with you sort of this process. So David and Charlie, could you please come up? So David, I'll introduce him, David, as David helped me. He goes to Eagle Ridge, right? I got it. Right, David? Okay. Eagle Ridge High School, and he lives in Brighton. And I recruited him to be one of the boys. So this is like a real boy, you can see. I didn't manufacture these boys. He can tell you that I harassed him with emails. I harassed him with emails. And Charlie Kuhn is helping me, started off as one of the men in his 20s who was helping me as a bridge editor while I was writing, and then asked him to help me with overall getting the guide into the hands of young men. So I've asked both of them to be up here for a few minutes to be able to answer also your questions, like ma'am, if you have a question, because we have a real example of a boy telling what works for him and what does not, and that's what this is about. So yes, ma'am.
So if malicious teasing is going on for your son, how do you handle it?
Okay, I'm gonna answer I'll answer you follow up? Okay. So you're not fighting the fight for him, right? He's in high school. So what I would do is I would say to him, and I say this to kids who actually, of course this is more important for high school, but I do this for a lot of ages, is to say, okay, if you continue not saying anything, what are the outcomes here? What are the 3 possible outcomes of not saying anything or not doing anything? If you do say something, what are the 3 possible outcomes? One of the things that you want, especially if if he's in a relationship with these boys, in some ways it's more tricky if he's friends with them, but what you want to get him to the place of realizing is that if he doesn't speak out, he has to do it strategically, and the guide shows how to do it strategically. If he doesn't do it, he's not in control of his life. And at a certain point, he has to learn to advocate for himself, or else literally people who have more power than him are constantly going to be making decisions for himself. And that is a choice, right, that a high school young man has to be able to decide. What does courage really look like? What does my masculinity and being a confident man really look like? That's the choice that you have to put in front of him. You can't make that decision though for him.
Oh yeah, I see this a lot too. Definitely, I think that a lot of people also like to wait for the right moment to make a stand, to find the right time to say, okay, I've had enough of this, so.
I think you're really right. But don't you think they sort of wait until and then they explode?
Oh yeah, definitely. I see that a lot. I mean, guys can continue teasing that specific person, And even if it's like joking, and then there's going to be that one time where the victim has had enough, and someone could say like something really, really bad, that's going to offend them like really bad, and he's just going to explode.
So one of the things that's really important is that, by the way, for people who work with girls, that's what happens with girls. They wait, they explode, and then you can ridicule them even more, right? So that's why it's like sort of slowing the process down. So what happens, what David just described, which I 110% agree with, can slow it down for the boy so he has more control. Otherwise, that's exactly what's going to happen, and he will get worked and manipulated by the other boys. And at a certain point, that has to become intolerable to him, to the point that he makes that really difficult decision to change the dynamic.
Yeah, so another angle at this, there is a time and a place that you can fight, and it might not be the answer that you want, but in both books, in the guide at least, there's a whole chapter about the right to fight. When you do it, why you do it, how you do it, not like tactics of this fight over the other, but there's ways, and there are things that you need to think about going into confronting that person, and that if you encourage him to read through that, it's a way to at least cross that off, or handle that yourself.
Yes?
I was just wanting to take that example you had of the pool.
I'll speak it out. I'll repeat it.
Oh, I can talk louder.
Okay, talk louder.
That example you had of the pool, could you walk through like what you would tell that boy who's being teased with the booze? What would you say to him to sort of guide him through that difficult?
It's actually, so what would I do if the mood boy comes to you, comes to me and talks about that, and I say all the things I said to you, right? You know, and then, so it's actually combining both of these things. So what I would do, and correct me if I'm, is I would say to him, okay, so these are your friends. I'm sure there are really good things about your friendships, right? These guys are your friends. You care about them. But there's some things here that are not so good. So you've got to make a choice about how you confront the person and where. And so the basic strategy that I do with any kind of confrontation is this. You think about exactly where you want to confront the person, because that's actually extraordinarily important. For boys playing video games, they can have very deep conversations while they're playing Call of Duty. And we're coming back after practice. They have such because they're calmer, but they've got to be alone. And remember I said at the very beginning, you've got to ease in and ease out of the conversation? So you think about exactly where you're going to confront the person. You say exactly what it is that is bothering you, what you want to happen instead. And because these boys are friends, the boy has to go through the process of thinking, do I want to stay friends with this person? Do I want to walk the person out or take a vacation? Right? And the process of going through this, when he does it in real life, might take 3 seconds and be very jumbled and messy and whatever. But he's done the process of what his boundaries are. And it goes right back to, and what that question is over here, but establishing boundaries with these people that are violating them. So that you're deciding what the violation is, you're naming it, and then you're saying what you want instead. And the result is, part of this is, assuming that the person's not going to agree with you, if they're going to push back and be totally obnoxious. So the part of that is also getting from the kid, what is the thing that's going to push back and get you off your game? And what is the success? And success is not that the guy is like 100% agreeing with you in that moment, because he can't, but that you have been able to speak your truth to power. And that's it. And if he says something totally obnoxious to you right afterwards, that's the deal. Because he's not going to sit there and go, yes, you're right, I will totally stop doing that. I totally understand, but I will never call you mood boy again. Right? That's not reality. It's just getting him to recognize it so he understands that you are not going to keep taking this. You sure, really?
You know what you're doing.
Okay. Charlie, do you want to say? Oh, God. Okay, that's it. From now on, you guys are, you're talking first. Yes. Yes. And then over here.
Can you say a little bit about working with the teaser?
Oh, the perpetrator.
Yeah.
So if you find out that your son is the teaser,
Yeah, that would work.
Or do you want to go yell at the child who you think is the perpetrator?
You're right, you're hearing a lot of strategies for the victim.
Yes.
And I just am curious.
Yeah, of course.
yeah, so one thing that we've heard time and time again is what happens if my son is the culprit. And at least in my past, I hated it when it was always overreactionary. It was too much. And I would encourage you to keep in mind that it's only a moment and that it's not a lifetime. that whatever issue that he caused or whatever thing that may seem to carry on his shoulders forever really isn't the case, that he can outgrow it. So just focus on that it's a moment. The next is really how you do your fact-finding. So get as much information as you can from the person that's presenting the problem to you, but then turn and look to him and get his side of the story, because there's always multiple ways to look at one thing. And he might have a very reasonable explanation to what his actions were, and it's important that you at least hear him out. Now, that might not always be right, but that's where I would start, and then together make kind of a decision both with the other person, the victim, if you will, and the perpetrator can accept what has happened, and it's more of a teaching moment than just strict discipline.
Do you want to say something? What I say to the boys I work with, the boys in my life, is it very much from what Charlie just said. Like, it riffed exactly is, okay, X information was just presented to me, is that accurate? And if they say any part of it's accurate, then I say, well, that's their truth. And you can't argue with that. Like, you can't say like, oh, they just took it the wrong way. I didn't know, or they're not strong. It wouldn't bother me if it happened to me. So I think as the parent, it's really important to be able to say that kid's emotional truth is their truth. You can't take away from that. If your child, just the way Charlie is saying, presents you information about like, well, this is the reason why this happened, I would suggest saying, okay, I'll address that, but it doesn't take away from the problem of what we're talking about, right? And the last thing is, you have to think about this in terms of how aggressive your child is, and David, tell me what you think about this, that if you're really dealing with a kid who's having a hard time getting it, like he's on a long road to being a decent human being, and he'll get there. He will get there. You will be exhausted on the road, but you will get there if it kills you, is you say something to him like, all right, I think we've come to an agreement, just like Charlie said, focus on the discipline of like what is appropriate for the situation. But if the life of the target becomes more difficult as a result of this conversation we're having right here, then we are on a whole different level of a problem. Because what you don't want to do is have your son walk out and text the bouncer, go after this kid, which of course he will do. So you are saying to him, here's the deal. Don't make the life of this kid more difficult, because if it does, then you are really dealing with a different level of a problem here. I wouldn't say it like an ultimatum. I would just say, like, this is where we're at. This is my family values, and my family values stand for you do not have the right to humiliate somebody or go after somebody, even if you're really angry. You just don't. And if you do, it's my job to hold you accountable. You think that? You're like my litmus test, right? You're like, like anything part of that you think is like ridiculous. You can say the word in front of all these people.
Oh, no, totally.
Okay. But sometimes we have kids who are super aggressive and they're committed. They're committed, and it can be really, really hard. And that's why I think what Charlie's saying about it's not a lifetime, it's a moment is really important. Okay, somebody over here had a question.
I just want to mention that my son's being 14 and he plays Xbox Live all the time. And he has conversations like this online, so I can only hear his side of it. And so I let him, go through his scheme or whatever expletives, he was his issues. And I walk in, I go, hey, what's going on? He's like, I don't have no luck, and he blows me off, right? But what I do, I walk out and I just say, hey, if you ever want to talk to me about that conversation, just let me know. Because so much of technology is now coming into our relationship. So just, be aware that I'm sure you know it. Thank you so much for this talk tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Can you reaffirm what are and I know maybe family members are here, but I'm giving you permission to say the words that people say online. What are when people are angry at each other, just regular words online, like when they're playing Xbox Live? What are the words that they use constantly to go after people?
Okay, usually because a lot of teenage guys play, Call of Duty and Halo, Grand Theft Auto, and all that stuff. So everyone likes to think that they're the best player out there. Okay? They think that because they're on level 53 and everyone else is at level 12, let's say, that they have the right to be like, okay, I know what I'm doing, you gotta listen to me, and you have no right. And then everybody I was just like, well, blah, 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 you can't say that to me. And then it all turns out to, excuse my language, well, fuck you. You have no idea what you're doing. You're a piece of shit, you know?
Do they use regular, I'll just help, like faggot, pussy, like all those words? All those. Yeah. So don't focus on Facebook and phone and the mobile phone is the first place to worry about your child. It's when they're playing Xbox Live that the social norming of what you say to each other when you're angry, that's where it's starting. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, we have many, many questions. Do you want to
All that I would add to the whole gaming thing, online communities, is there's very little difference between live, in-person life, and then their online lives, especially for these younger generations. So it's hard to blend, or hard to see the difference between the two. And as long as you appreciate that, not just say it's online, what are you doing, that kind of emotional hazing is real life and can be very effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the book, I go into great detail about video gaming in Masterminds. And it's not all bad. There's wonderful things about it, but absolutely this is complicated. And how many people here have had their sons ask them for Grand Theft Auto 5 last week, 2 weeks? Okay, so let's just be clear, because I've had a lot of parents say to me, my son is relentlessly asking me for GTA 5. I let my children play violent first-person shooter games, and we can have a healthy debate about this. GTA 5 is where I absolutely draw the line. Because, and what I just said, I allow first-person shooter games in my house, okay? GTA 5 is proud, Grand Theft Auto has been proud of having prostitutes that they can go after in their game. They are proud, it's part of their identity. And in the game, there are level 5 are two things. One is prostitute that you can kill and get money back. And number 2 is there is a torture scene in it that is very similar to what we see in the news. So when a boy says, and I've been hearing this all over the country, Charlie and I've been hearing this all over the country, Mom, it's violent, I've been playing violent video games for a really long time, there's no difference, that boy is working that parent. Because he knows what's going on. Or if he doesn't, that's an even bigger problem. So we've got to be educated to be able to have conversations of content with our kids, decide, no, you can't use it, and yes, absolutely, you can have everything. Okay? All right, can you choose the last one, please? Because I'm feeling a lot of pressure. And you need to talk to the guy for a second. Oh, yeah.
I'm a middle school teacher, and we have boys, we have girls, and the boy-girl change the relationship when the girl breaks up with the boy and then jumps on his best friend. Lose. As an educator, what am I supposed to do when these kids come to me?
We have so many chapters about that. Let me ask you this question. If you can remember it, to put you a little bit on the spot, but what was the thing that you remember, or what do you think comes to you about the things that we talked about with girls and friendships and the betrayals that would happen? Is there something that came, like an answer to this question, was one of the more important takeaways, do you think, that we were talking to boys about in the guide? Anything come to mind?
Not necessarily, but I have seen this a lot of times, not a lot, but like 3 or 4 maybe, I'm sorry. But I see where a guy and a girl are like dating, they're going out for a little while, they're holding hands across the hallway, and then all of a sudden they break up for no reason at all, sometimes. And then, the guy goes to his best friend and says, oh no, what do? I still love her, I want her back. And they're talking for a while, just like, you know what, you just need to apologize, you need to talk it out, as friends. And then you guys can go from there, you can maybe start over and just start as friends again. But then, ironically, what happens is that a few weeks later, your ex-girlfriend starts to get interested to your best friend. So, and you feel really betrayed because you told him that you still love her, that you want to work things out, and then they come out of nowhere and they're like, oh yeah, we like each other, we're gonna go on a date. You're just like, what the hell, man?
But do you say anything about it? Does the boy in that situation say anything about it?
they don't say anything about it. They know that I'm really upset about this, but they don't say anything because there's nothing that they think they could say about it. They just look at you awkward, like, I'm sorry, man, but what's done is done. I've done everything that I can.
So now I'm just going to go get with that girl. What do you want to say?
So I think, you know also well being in middle school, but back in middle school, I was scrawny and didn't have much going on, and there was a girl that was nearly fully developed, that was walking around the hallways with, getting a lot of attention. I think this is one place where the power dynamics is really interesting to look at, and that a boy, whoever that female may be, has a hard time saying no. And it just goes to speak to the culture that we're in, where boys have all the power, they're masculine, they can throw on whatever they want, but that's not really the case for a lot of times in life, and this is one that you hit on the head. Now, leave it to the expert to have your advice.
Let's just think about, as Charlie said, you tell an 8th grade boy who's scrawny and not physically developed that he's the one with the gender power in that situation, next to a girl who's fully developed, walking down the street, where everybody's paying attention, and the boys are like, I'm sorry, you are not living in the world that I'm living in. That girl has all the power. The thing that that David references, that I think is really important, is that boys started in middle school through high school are taking advantage of the bro code, which is ironically, right, like bros before hoes, right, that horrible phrase. But what happens is the boys bank on, just like what David talked about, that the friend goes after the girl or goes and hooks up with the girl because the boys will not talk to each other about it, right? They won't, and most boys are not going to fight that out because it looks ridiculous, right? And you're giving all the power to the girl when you do that. So then you suffer in silence. So one of the things that we did in the guide was we showed sort of this, the statute of limitations is what it's called. So like, who were you not allowed to hook up with, and also at all, and also how much time could transpire before going with some other girl. And we went from inner circle, like best friend, inner circle, like bigger inner circle, like on your team, you hate the guy. And that was really, really helpful for the boys, and then we tied it to definitions of loyalty, true loyalty. All right. I just want to, before we close, I want to ask Charlie to speak just a little bit about the guide, if you have questions about it, and reiterate the thing that I said in the very beginning.
Yeah, so please, it will all just crumble if you go home really wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, saying this is the best thing for you, go get it. It doesn't work. So check out the letter on the back page with the Masterminds. It's one way of doing this. Basically, the guide is written for boys by guys. It's on all online platforms, so if it's Amazon or iTunes or it's the Nook, it's all out there. You can just search on whatever store that you would go to for that appropriate device and find it. We also have another for schools. If you're a part of a school and maybe you want to get it into your freshman seminar, replace the word douchebags for jerks, and there's the school version. It's all the same, but just a different title. So it's free until December 10th at this point, so go get it, and if you have questions, comments, I'm more than happy to talk to you.
So in closing, I know that where people have questions, and if you want, you can contact me when you do this. I mean, if you have more questions. I'm on a book tour right now. Charlie and I are on a book tour, so it's going to take me a little while to get back to you. Or Charlie actually he's really good at I'm putting pressure on you. He's really good at getting back to people. So I'm always very impressed. So in any case, this is just what I want you to remember, okay? Is that this is super, super messy. All of the questions that were asked of me today are so much easier to say in this room than to actually apply in real life. I know that. You know that. So you have to give credit to the boys about how difficult this is. And just remember, though, as we go through the messiness of this, well, the things I said in the very beginning, this is about social competency. This is about being able to figure out that conflict is inevitable, you will face it, he's going to face it, and he will face abuse of power. If we get through this, and you teach him that social competency is the focus, you do your best, the dignity of yourself or the boy and the other people is not negotiable. That's like the one thing that's not negotiable. And then you're with him every step of the way, and you can hear it if he's saying, I need you to back off a little bit. I need to hear it in a different, I need you to talk to me in a different way. your son or the boys that are important in your life, I know are going to come forward. That has been the thing that has been so hopeful and amazing to me through the process of these books, is that these boys will come forward if we meet them halfway. So thank you very, very much for your time. It's great. Thank you to Penn, and of course, but also, because this is my hometown, I need to tell you that for the first time in my professional career, basically, my own children are in the audience, and they have done a very good job of sitting there and taking it. So I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate it. You're really talented. Thank you very much. And thanks, Paula.
We want to thank you all again for coming tonight, and in your packets that you received, there are evaluation forms, and those are really important to our organization. Believe it or not, we really read over every single evaluation. It informs the work we do, it helps our presenters, and it helps us in the work that we do. So please fill those out. Rosalind will be outside signing books.